O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom, know it with certainty, and accomplish it perfectly. For the glory and honor of thy name, and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory, and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabeg, Dakota Oete, Dene Sulene, and Neothog nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. Routine proceedings. Introduction of bills. Committee reports. The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the fourth report of the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs.
Your standing.
Dispense. The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Lagimodiere, that the report of the committee be received.
Been moved by the Honourable Member for Transcona, seconded by the Honourable Member for Lagimodiere, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The motion is accordingly passed. No further committee reports. Tabling of reports. The Honourable First Minister.
In congruence with Section 5, Bracket 2 of the Path to Reconciliation Act, I'd like to present the 24-25 Path to Reconciliation Act Annual Progress Report. To that.
Further tabling of reports. The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
I'm pleased to table the 2025 Health Status of Manitobans report prepared by Manitoba's Chief Provincial Public Health Officer in accordance with the requirements of Section 16 of the Public Health Act. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Ministerial statements. The Honourable First Minister.
Wache gigitoinini. Mawach namunde endam nongum. Chigana wendamak ke tanishinu kijwe wenan. Ki spin wenda on Jake Winnipeg. Mini washte shagegan. Asini wi piwan siebing on tenang. Kimiko mekwa. Kakana anishniniak kitabush dumen ke kijwe wenan. Ekwa uskat zuk tamunyawa ki spin abus duwach Anishinaabe o kijwe wenenan Anishinini wen Dakota Omaskigo Buskanuk Siwak Inuitak Tenislutene Kaganotiok Anishininu Kegizwe wen. Big one.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Today I recognize Indigenous Languages Day, observed on March 31st. It's a day to celebrate, protect, and promote the Indigenous languages that are foundational to Manitoba's history and identity. Language is more than a means of communication. It is the thread that connects generations, carrying with it stories, culture, traditions, and knowledge. Through language, communities pass on values, build understanding, and strengthen identity. We must also acknowledge a difficult truth. In Canada's history, there were deliberate and systemic efforts to suppress and erase Indigenous languages. These actions cause lasting harm to individuals, families, and communities.
Honourable member's time has expired. Is there leave for the honourable member to finish his statement? Leave has been denied. Member statements. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Honourable Speaker, I have spoken with many families across Manitoba and in my riding of Fort White since this budget was tabled by this NDP government. The response from my constituents, they need two things. They need help right now and as they struggle through this affordability crisis, and they need hope for the future. Help and hope is what Manitobans are asking for. Two things that are in short supply in this NDP budget. Instead of help, this government is offering Manitoba savings of 2 cents on a litre of milk. Instead of help, this government is offering 1.5 cents of savings on a litre of gas. And to add insult to injury, this government will now give you 7 cents off a can of pop, unless you buy it at a gas station, local grocery store, or restaurant. Then there are zero savings for you. The NDP is offering you pennies, not help. My constituents know this Premier is adept at making speeches, stunts, and smiling for the camera. But when it comes to delivering on his promises, he is falling short. The Premier's work this week was less than stellar. His budget provided no help for struggling families, and then the Premier made it clear there would be no help for small businesses or local grocers. No help and no hope. This budget was supposed to bring hope for economic growth for small businesses and families throughout Manitoba, but it has brought uncertainty and insecurity, Honourable Speaker. On this side of the House, the PC's proposal would increase the basic personal tax exemption up to $30,000, allowing up to each family to save $3,000 in your pocket, Honourable Speaker. That is help. That is hope. That's what Manitobans need. That's what this budget fails to deliver. And that's what we on this side of the House will deliver for Manitobans. The PCs are committed to providing an actual plan that will provide you help and hope.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for Radisson.
Honourable Speaker, as someone assessed for my own neurodivergence about a year ago, I take great meaning in rising today to recognize World Autism Awareness Day on April 2nd. Autism is not one single experience, nor does it present identically in each person who lives with it. It shapes how folks communicate, how they connect with others, and how they see the world, presenting different strengths, perspectives, and ways of thinking that enrich our communities. Though our current world also creates different challenges for those living with autism, challenges that include stigma, misunderstanding, and discrimination. Across the globe, April 2nd is an opportunity for folks of all abilities to make special effort to truly see the autistic experience and to think critically about how our communities can be made better for those who live in it. Autism cannot be defined by limitations, but by the livelihood those living with autism bring to our community. That livelihood manifests itself in how deeply they feel, how observant they are, and how much they can teach us. Far too often, people with autism feel the burden to mask their gifts that make them who they are, out of fear of being found out and treated differently. Not only can constant masking lead to burnout and depression in people with autism, masking deprives the wider community of what they have to offer at their full capacity. That's why, to mark this year's World Autism Day, I challenge all Manitobans to think critically about what they can do to become a safer person for those living with autism, a safer person who creates an implicit environment where they can reach their full potential as their truest self. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie.
I'm pleased today to highlight the Hoop and Holler Folk Festival. This festival is 100% volunteer-driven, grassroots, nonprofit organization founded in 2015 by Linda and Mitchell Omachinsky and Josh Wright, who are here with us today. Each summer, the Hoop and Holler Festival takes place on an acreage with gardens, nature trails, tent camping, and intimate sites for performances and workshops. The festival supports and promotes local music and arts in Portage La Prairie while bringing in touring performing artists from Manitoba and across Canada, like Baldy, Indian City, and Sweet Alibi, just to name a few. Music, arts, nature, and community are the pillars of the organization, exemplified through the work of the Summer Festival and the year-round events like in the Winter Concert Series and the popular open mic and jam sessions. Now in its 12th year, the festival was the recipient of the Outstanding Commitment to Community Award from the Portage Chamber of Commerce in 2025 and the Marketing Excellence Award from the Central Manitoba Tourism Association in 2019. It was also one of the 2 finalists for Event of the Year at the Manitoba and Winnipeg Provincial Tourism Art Awards in 2023. Hoop and Holler's goal is to remain inclusive and accessible for folks of all walks of life, connecting local residents and visiting tourists with affordable and free programming. Local volunteers, sponsors, and strong community partnerships with groups like Visions of Independence. This is just truly a wonderful festival, and I'd like all members to join me in honoring Linda and Mitchell Omachinsky and Josh Wright, who are here in the gallery with us. Well done, Hoop and Holler Festival.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
L'honorable président, chaque année en mars, Saint-Boniface et les communautés de tout le Manitoba s'animent à l'occasion des rendez-vous de la francophonie, une célébration qui met en valeur la richesse de la langue française et des cultures qui façonnent notre province. Au Manitoba, cette importante initiative nationale est coordonnée par la Société de la francophonie manitobaine, dont le leadership contribue à donner vie à ces célébrations dans toutes nos communautés. Les festivités de cette année ont officiellement débuté le 4 mars 2026 avec un lancement au Musée canadien des droits de la personne. Organisé en partenariat avec le musée, ce rassemblement a réuni des leaders communautaires et des partenaires pour marquer le coup d'envoi provincial d'un mois entier d'activités. À Winnipeg, la participation s'est manifestée aux 4 coins de la ville. Au Centre culturel franco-manitobain, les familles se sont rassemblées pour des concerts et des spectacles qui ont réuni des personnes de toutes les générations. Dans nos écoles locales, l'honorable président, les élèves ont pris part à des activités en français, découvrant de nouveaux artistes et de nouvelles histoires et une fierté plus profonde d'être qui ils sont. Et dans les lieux communautaires de toute la ville, les Manitobains se sont réunis pour des projections de films, des ateliers culturels et des discussions qui ont renforcé les liens au sein de la communauté francophone et bien au-delà. En tant que député de Saint-Boniface, je constate chaque jour la fierté, la créativité et la résilience qui caractérisent nos communautés francophones. Le rendez-vous de la francophonie nous rappelle que notre langue continue, Monsieur l'honorable président, de façonner qui nous sommes aujourd'hui et où nous allons. C'est une célébration qui nous rassemble. Je tiens à remercier la Société de la francophonie manitobaine ainsi que les nombreux partenaires, bénévoles, artistes et membres de la communauté qui rendent ces célébrations possibles. Grâce à vous, la francophonie manitobaine continue de rayonner partout dans notre belle province. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Roblin.
I rise today to recognize an extraordinary constituent, Greg Wiens, whose work is quietly transforming lives around the world. Greg's journey began through his calling as a Mennonite pastor, rooted in service and a deep commitment to helping others. That calling has taken him far beyond our borders. into rural villages, refugee camps, and communities where something as simple as a pair of glasses can mean the difference between dependence and opportunity. Today, 2.5 billion people worldwide lack access to basic prescription glasses. In parts of northern Ghana, there is fewer than one optometrist for every 100,000 people. Without clear vision, adults struggle to work and children struggle to learn, trapping families in a cycle of poverty. Through his work with Global Vision 2020, Greg is helping change that. Using an innovative system, local entrepreneurs can test vision and dispense custom prescription glasses in minutes at a cost of less than $7 per pair. This model has already delivered over 1 million pairs of glasses worldwide. Most recently, Greg and his partners secured funding to train 25 nurses in Ghana, equipping them with the skills and tools they will keep, ensuring ongoing access to care and putting sustainability into action. As Greg has said, this work is about moving from charity to sustainability. That shift has been made possible through partnership with IDE Canada, an award-winning Winnipeg-based leader in international development. By empowering local entrepreneurs and building community-led systems, IDE has been a catalyst in transforming this work into a scalable, market-based solution. On behalf of this House, I invite all members to join me in recognizing Greg Wiens from Global Vision 2020 and Stu Taylor of IDE Canada, who join us in the gallery today, for their dedication, leadership, and the lasting difference they are making in the lives of so many.
Prior to moving on, I'd like to draw the attention of all honourable members to the loge to my right, where we have with us today Jim Dinn, member of the Newfoundland House of Assembly for St. John's Centre and leader of the Newfoundland NDP. We welcome you here today. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
According to the Canada Food Price Report, the average Manitoba family spends about $300 a week on groceries, almost all of which is on essential foods such as meats, proteins, fruits and vegetables, dairy, eggs, and bread. The basics. The food that we already are PST exempt from paying. That means that almost all of your groceries are already exempt from PST. So what really has the Premier done with his PST exemption on groceries? Virtually nothing. A weekly grocery shop of $300 per week will generate about $30 of goods that have the PST applied to it. Let me spell that out for the Premier. That's about a savings of $2 a week. How can the Premier look the good people of Manitoba in the eye and tell them that he's actually making life more affordable by saving them $2 a week?
The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, Manitobans have been talking to us about the cost of living, and in Budget 2026, we're delivering. We're taking all the tax off of all food and drinks from the grocery store. When we came into office, we took all the tax off of gasoline in Manitoba. Wow. We saved you $350 million in the process. What do they do on the other side? They can't keep up with us on tax cuts. They can't keep up with us on balancing the books. In fact, I'll table the latest review from Morningstar DBRS rating agency, which says Manitoba's 26-27 budget balance within reach. We're balancing the books. We're fixing healthcare. We're saving you money. No wonder they pick on minority communities. It's the only thing they got left on the PC side.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Manitobans know that about 90% of their groceries are already PST exempt, but Manitoba families are struggling with the cost of affordability. Costs are up on 100% of grocery items. Manitoba families need help now, not only with pop and pretzels, but with healthy foods like meats and vegetables. They need a plan to help with 100% of the groceries they buy, not 10% of the snacks and junk food. Why the Manitoba Premier is so out of touch with Manitoba families shocks everyone, Honourable Speaker. You, me, and the rest of this House and all Manitobans know the cost of living is a real crisis right now. The Premier seems to be happy with announcing a $2 of savings a week for Manitobans. How is the Premier so arrogant that he can look at Manitobans that are struggling to pay their bills and say that he's going to make your life easier by saving you pennies, when on this side of the House we want to save you hundreds and thousands of dollars?
Time has expired. The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, you know what there is in Budget 2026? There's a plan to take 100% of the tax off of 100% of the food and drinks at the grocery store. That sounds good. When you want to eat healthy at the grocery store, but you're in a rush, you're a busy parent, you got to get the food on the table after school before you take the kids to hockey practice or piano. What do? You run into Co-op or Safeway or Sobeys. You grab a rotisserie chicken. You grab the Greek salad. You go grab a case of drinks. Make it the sugar-free drinks. That's good news in Budget 2026. None of that has tax on it anymore if and only if the PCs bow down and let us pass our budget by June. What are they going to do? Are they going to stand up and argue about how great our plan is, or are they going to get out of the way to save you money? There you go.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary question.
The Premier's smile and arrogance isn't making life more affordable for Manitobans. It's actually making it harder, Honourable Speaker. The Premier stands up and says $2 of savings is going to make your life better. Over 90% of items at the grocery store are already PST exempt. The Premier is taking the PST off of chips, pop, saving you pennies, Honourable Speaker. We on this side of the House presented a plan that would save Manitobans thousands of dollars a year, and this Premier is voting against it, Honourable Speaker. We want to put more money back in your pocket. This Premier wants to save you pennies. But the Premier can correct his track record today. He can stand up and support our PC resolution that will provide Manitoba families with up to $3,000 back in their bank accounts instead of sprinkling pennies across Manitobans. Will he do the right thing today and support our resolution to make life more affordable for Manitobans?
The Honourable First Minister.
We know that the cost of living is a big priority for you, and that's why we're taking all the tax off of all groceries at the grocery store. That's why we cut the tax on gasoline. That's why we froze electricity rates. That's why we froze the price of milk in Manitoba. This is real relief that you can believe in. Nobody believes the PCs because you know what? They were in government for 2 terms. What did they do on the price of milk? They signed off at the cabinet table on raising it. What did they do on gasoline prices? Absolutely nothing. What did they do to help you at the grocery store? Absolutely nothing. Instead, they chose to campaign on attacking LGBT folks and Indigenous women. Obviously, they got shown the door for that embarrassing conduct. And now that they're in opposition, now all of a sudden believe us. Now all of a sudden we got a plan to help you with the cost of living. No one believes you. Let's keep working together, Manitoba. We're making life better.
There you go.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
It's not just about saving Manitobans money, it's also about what happens with those savings. Our proposal on this side of the House is designed to improve Manitoba's economy, which under this NDP government is dead last in the country yet again. Because we know that when Manitobans have extra cash in their pockets, they'll spend more money in Manitoba. Those restaurants that the Premier is unwilling to help out, those small businesses, those local grocery stores that the Premier has left out intentionally out of this PST exemption are suffering, Honourable Speaker. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, even largers would thrive under our plan because we know when Manitobans have more money in their pockets, they will reinvest in their economy. Does the Premier understand that allowing Manitobans to keep more of their own money will grow the economy, or is he just being arrogant and refusing to do the math?
The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, we're the party of small business because
right.
we got the small businesses on this side of the House
Yeah.
that actually went out and earned it. On that side of the House, they're the silver spoon party. So it's handed to each and every one of them.
Yep.
So what are we doing to help small business? Security rebate programs to protect your hard-earned investments.
right.
We've taken thousands of businesses off of the payroll tax in Manitoba, and we were also the party that brought in the corporate income tax exemption for small businesses. What did they do on that side of the House? Well, Heather Stephenson, the worst premier in Manitoba history, gave their now leader $500 grand.
What?
What did he do with that money? Did he help the restaurants that he's now trying to cry around for? Did he help the small businesses?
Yeah.
No. He sat on that money. He frittered it away. He ended up getting sued by fellow PC donors. And now, at the nadir of popularity, go ahead, Google that term, they're trying to change their tune.
Yeah.
Too little, too late. We're helping
Member's
small
time has
business.
expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
That's quite rich and hypocritical coming from the Premier who went to private school, lives on Wellington Crescent, and also has a police escort driving him everywhere. He hasn't done his own grocery shopping in years, Honourable Speaker.
Order.
What's frustrating about this Premier, Honourable Speaker, he pretends that this benefit will protect everyone, Honourable Speaker.
Order.
That's simply not true. What we have in Winnipeg and Manitoba called food deserts. That is a low-income area which is over 2 kilometers from the nearest big grocery store. Manitobans living in food deserts and areas are largely represented by this NDP MLAs, which is obvious they don't care about making life more affordable for you. No. People who live in this area rely on local grocery stores and convenience stores, yet this Premier has left them off of this PST exemption. Is the Premier unaware of how people who need a break aren't actually getting it, or does he simply not care?
The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, not only did we remove all tax at the grocery store to help people living in poverty, we're also making transit free for all children and youth in Manitoba. That's not only going to help with poverty, not only is that going to help with the cost of living, that helps with the environment too. Plus, there's more. $2.5 million towards adult literacy.
Wow.
A generational investment to help those Manitobans that, for whatever reason, haven't gotten the same chance at success that some more fortunate Manitobans have. More fortunate Manitobans like their colleague from Red River North.
Yeah.
You'll remember that they recently, within the past couple weeks, had one of their MLAs leave the party because they refused to take action on the biggest corruption scandal in Manitoba history.
Yep.
Just yesterday, their former premier was asked about the Sciosilica affair, and he said, and I quote, "I'll only say our record as a government when I was premier was one of integrity," said Pallister.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary
It's clear
question.
the Premier doesn't want to talk about affordability for Manitobans, but we will. Manitobans are $200 a month away from losing everything, Honourable Speaker. $200 for making ends meet. The Premier is rejecting our PC plan that will allow you to keep up to $250 more in your bank accounts, up to $3,000 a year for Manitoba families. Imagine being $200 away from being broke and someone giving you $250 a month. That is a big difference, not pennies, Honourable Speaker. You can choose $250 under our PC plan a month or pennies under this Premier and his failing NDP government. The Premier has done nothing to make life more affordable other than sprinkle pennies across this province. Why is the Premier offering 7 cents off a can of pop instead of giving Manitobans up to $3,000 back?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, there you go. It's the nanny state party of the current PCs of Manitoba getting after you for drinking pop. On this side of the House, you should eat the chicken and you should eat the Greek salad. But we also know that it's your choice. You know why? We believe in freedom.
That's right.
On this side of the House. On that side of the House, They hate freedom. They hate the freedom of a woman who has the right to choose with her own body. They hate the freedom of LGBT people to be who they are. They hate the freedom of Indigenous women to live free of violence in our society. The only thing we hate on this side of the house, people who fake it at election time the PCs. Everyone else come on board. We're saving you money. We're saving the environment. Heck, we might even save our democracy by consigning them to opposition for the rest of time.
Order. The Honourable Member for Roblin.
This NDP budget has gone over like a lead balloon. It was disappointing for families who expected some real relief from the affordability crisis. It was disappointing to the city of Winnipeg that's now left holding the bag on Newpick. But it was particularly disappointing for small businesses. Rising input costs, skyrocketing energy bills, workforce challenges, high taxes. Not only did this NDP budget fail to do anything to address these problems, it actually made them worse. Why are small businesses just an afterthought to this NDP government?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, our budget, and I want to thank the Premier and the Minister of Finance for stewarding the best budget in all of Canada. Not only does it deliver on some of the best rates, and Morningstar DBS is calling it balanced within reach, Manitoba's 2026-2027 budget. But it also delivers on real affordability for real Manitobans by taking PSD off of all food and drinks and grocery stores. That's real affordability. That's real action from a real government that cares about Manitobans. On top of that, we're supporting businesses by doubling our export support program and making sure they have the financing program with a new $50 million loan program and a new safety program to make sure that we can support businesses when they need it. That's a government that cares about small businesses, cares about growing our economy, and cares about affordability for all Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Roblin.
Nothing the minister said there reflected priorities put forward by Manitoba small businesses in advance of this terrible budget. The fact that the NDP completely forgot about small businesses is pretty disappointing. But to add insult to injury, the NDP government purposely excluded small businesses and restaurants from their pitiful, meager, so-called affordability measure in this budget. They're giving preferential treatment to Loblaws, Walmart, and Costco over Manitoba's small grocers and restaurants. No tax-free chicken for them. So my question to this minister is, what has he got against Manitoba small businesses that he is intentionally driving Manitoba consumers to their large national chain competitors?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Well, our budget, Honourable Speaker, and I'll remind Manitobans that it focuses on good jobs, better health care and lower costs, is one that delivers on the priorities for all Manitobans, including small businesses. Our track record of taking small businesses, hundreds of small businesses, off of the payroll tax is one that's incredibly strong. On top of that, we didn't stop there. We're doing more to help small businesses. That includes ensuring that they have the supports to keep their businesses safe, that they can actually help export their industries with a doubling of our export support program, and on top of that, providing them the capital and the investment tools to grow their businesses right here at home. We'll continue doing that work on behalf of all businesses to make sure we have a strong economy well into the future.
The Honourable Member for Roblin on a final supplementary question.
This minister is just wrong. The NDP jacked up property taxes for small businesses and cancelled their rebates completely. They provided no payroll tax relief, no incentives to grow. They didn't reverse their damaging changes to apprenticeship ratios. And when it comes to red tape reduction, this NDP government took Manitoba from the best in the country to the worst in 2 years. The result has been 6 consecutive quarters where business exits have outpaced new business starts in Manitoba. That is a clear sign of declining business confidence. Why is this NDP government actively driving small businesses out of Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister, Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Well, when it comes to our budget, we look into the banks. Let's not listen to members opposite who clearly didn't read through the whole thing and know what they're talking about. Let's listen to BMO, who said, finally, surplus is calling. That's a budget that delivers on priorities for Manitobans. Yes. On top of that, we delivered on affordability with real relief for individuals who, by taking the PSD off groceries, by ensuring we have free transit for youth, by ensuring we have free childcare for the folks who need the help the most, yes, by ensuring we have a new increase to our homeowners' affordability tax credit of $1,700. And on top of all of that, we're helping renters too, with an increase to the renters' tax credit. That's real relief for Manitobans. We're supporting individuals.
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for La-Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We're seeing a trend here. When this government doesn't have the answer, they just simply ignore it. Yesterday, we repeatedly asked on what page is the budget showcased for the North End treatment plant. Well, this government didn't give an answer. They said there's billions of dollars. The minister said there's millions of dollars, but nobody could give a straight answer. Well, the answer is on page 70, and it's simply just stating that the development of a plan will be made. Honourable Speaker, will this Premier does this Premier not understand the difference between making a plan and funding a plant?
The Honourable First Minister.
I want to thank the member opposite for pointing out the great investment we're making in the North End Water Pollution Control Centre in budget 2026. Thank you. You know, down the hall last night, they were gathered, putting the old seal clappers together for the person who couldn't even talk to the mayor of Winnipeg. You know where I was? I was having dinner with Scott Gillingham, charting a bright future for this wonderful province. So there's the contrast. Members opposite who can't pick up the phone, who can't send a text, who can't even send a telegram to the city of Winnipeg. And here's the other thing that we're doing on affordability. By printing it in such large text in our budget, we're making sure that their staffers will have jobs for years to come too. Keep coming in here and writing questions for the opposition to share the good news about budget 2026.
The honourable member for La-Vérendrye on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this government doesn't have a plan. What it is a sticky note from the government to themselves, reminding them to eventually come up with a plan. And Manitobans are finding it very disrespectful. They find it disrespectful that this Premier has time for a finger-licking, chicken-eating publicity stunt, but he does not have time to showcase the financial plan of the province's largest city.
Order. Stop the clock. Order. The Speaker is standing. We've done pretty good up till now. Let's try and keep it that way for the rest of the day. The honourable member for La-Vérendrye.
Honourable Speaker, the fact is this Premier is restricting the development potential of our largest city in the province. If the funding exists, how much is it, when will it come, and where can it be found? Manitobans deserve the answer, not just the mayor of the city of Winnipeg.
The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I don't know if we're getting close to lunchtime or what in this chamber, but I'm all of a sudden thinking about those 11 different herbs and spices. And when you're talking about 11 different herbs and spices, you're talking about more herbs and spices than there are MLAs still sitting with this leader in the Progressive Conservative Caucus. So on that side of the House, not only can they never get along with cities and municipalities, they can't even get along with themselves. The big portrait unveiling yesterday, they couldn't even invite their last Premier, Heather Stephenson, to attend. No. We'll let them go ahead and go into PC family counseling. On this side of the House, we're one big happy family. You, the neighbours, your government, working together to fix healthcare, to make life more affordable, to make a better tomorrow.
The honourable member for La-Vérendrye on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, once again, theatrics and jokes from this Premier and no clear plan. The disrespect to Manitobans is thick.
Order, please. Stop the clock. The government bench needs to come to order. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Honourable Speaker, the disrespect is thick from this Premier and this government. All Manitobans deserve to know what the plan is, not just a backroom conversation between a mayor and a Premier. All Manitobans deserve to know the direction of this province. Honourable Speaker, why is this government risking economic growth and affordability by failing to provide a clear and credible funding plan for the North End treatment plant?
The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, we're funding the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. Yeah. It's a project they could never get done during their time in government. We've had money for the North End plant every single year in every single budget. Yeah. But they really need to get outside of the perimeter. Yeah. They suffer from a severe case of perimeteritis. They do. Because we're also funding water and wastewater in the RSR region, in the Pembina Valley region, and in the Westman. Yesterday, they were telling us again how much great news there is for Brandon in Budget 2026, but then their leader brought in the amendment to the budget motion. And I looked through Clause A, Clause B, Clause C, all the way to Clause R. That's right, he couldn't get to Clause Z, for the record. Not a single mention of Brandon. Shame. How dare they leave out Manitoba's second largest city? Wow. These perimeter hugging PC hypocrites.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Honourable Speaker, Manitobans are being told that Manitoba Hydro does not dispatch crews overnight for outages affecting fewer than 500 customers. Can the Minister confirm whether this is an official policy and explain how the government can justify delaying restoration for smaller and rural communities, particularly in extreme weather?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, our track record on hydro is pretty clear. That we want to continue to build up our generation capacity so that we can work and power projects and communities right across our province, but also deliver affordability for Manitobans. That's our plan. We've been really clear about that. Unlike the record of members opposite, when they were in power, what did we see? We saw backroom deals, rates being jacked up in the dark of night at the cabinet table, and not a single kilowatt of energy, of new power, was generated under their time in office. That is a terrible record they should be shameful of. And so for us, we want to deliver on real affordability for energy for all Manitobans to help grow a prosperous economy.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside on a supplementary question.
Well, there you have it, Honourable Speaker. The Minister not dealing with the issue at hand that I had in my constituency just a week ago. Honourable Speaker, even smaller outages can put lives and livelihoods at risk, impacting seniors, those relying on medical devices and farm operations that depend on power for livestock, ventilation, and water systems. What risk assessment has been conducted to ensure that limiting overnight response does not endanger Manitobans or their animals or emergency response?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thanks, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from member opposite. We'll certainly look into the particular issues the member is raising and be able to deliver on them in a really solid way. But I think the main focus here is how do we ensure we have clean, affordable energy for all Manitobans that they can count on and is reliable. Our plan is to make sure we work with Indigenous communities to deliver on 600 megawatts of new wind generation power. That's going to power our economy well into the future. And while we do that, we deliver on affordability for Manitobans, including our hydro rate freeze, which allowed Manitobans to have frozen rates for an entire year. That is delivering on affordability, reliability, and on energy generation, a plan that we're happy to live on that is completely foreign concept.
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Lakeside on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, the Minister needs to concentrate on delivering that service to rural Manitoba. An overnight outage that often exceeds the backup power capacity of cell towers, if it exists at all. The loss of cellular service can cut off access to 911 and emergency communication. This has the very real potential to cause a tragedy. Why is this minister putting the lives of Manitobans at risk?
The Honourable Minister, Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, we're going to make sure we have the safety of Manitobans as our top priority, as we do across all files. And we work hard with Manitoba Hydro to ensure that they deliver on reliable energy to every corner of the province. We'll continue to do that good work. But let me be clear about their record with Manitoba Hydro, where they, in the dark of night, at the cabinet table, jacked up the rates for Manitobans. That's their record. All while delivering zero, let's repeat that again, zero new energy, not a single kilowatt of new energy was generated under the former failed government. So we will continue to work to deliver affordability, reliability, and new energy generation for Manitobans for this generation and the generation to come.
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie.
People in the audience here today and people watching deserve real answers, not joking and laughing like the Premier is doing. This budget allocates $5.6 million for drug consumption, yet only $1.5 million for the Ann Oak Recovery Centre. It also includes nothing, not a thing, for a new RAM clinic. It is clear that this government is more comfortable trapping vulnerable people in addiction than it is in providing options for treatment and recovery. Why is this NDP government doing nothing for funding treatment?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. And what I would say to that member is when they were in government, they did nothing to help and support people who were struggling with mental health and addictions. What they did is they sold off Manitoba Housing, they put people in tents, they left seniors who were outside this building begging that government to help them with their housing at Lyons Place. Did they listen to them? No. They have a government who's listening, who is supporting. We're taking a four-pillared approach, which is harm reduction, getting people to the supports and services they need, onto a path of recovery. We're working on enforcement along with our Justice Minister to get the drugs off the street. We're working with our
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie on a supplementary question.
The team at the Bruce Oak Recovery Centre does amazing work, and the results speak for themselves. The Ann Oak model is designed to give women the best chance for success, unlike the drug consumption sites that this government is wanting. A model that other jurisdictions are getting away from as quickly as possible. Why does this NDP government insist on picking a failed model for funding instead of expanding on proven success recovery stories?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
I want to lift up Bruce Oak for all of the incredible work that they are doing. And again, we are taking a balanced approach, and we are funding them, and we are funding Ann Oak as well. So I'm looking forward to the opening of that centre. Again, we are educating. We are, funding nutrition program to ensure kids are in school, and we're working with parents as well. We are also working with RAM Clinic, first open Indigenous RAM clinic ever, who are leading people to recovery. We've expanded capacity to digital RAM so people can get supports and services right across our great province, something the previous government never did. We will take no lessons from members.
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie on a final supplementary question.
Maybe the government missed this earlier on, but this budget is allocating $5.6 million for consumption, drug consumption sites, yet only $1.5 million for Ann Oak. RAM clinics aren't included in this budget despite their proven success. In 2.5 years, this NDP government has failed to expand services and open a single clinic. They cut the ribbon on investments made by our government, but have shown no initiative of their own. Treatment works. The recovery model works. So why is this minister insisting on doubling down on a failed model her premier is backpedaling away from?
Time has expired. The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addiction and Homelessness.
So let me educate the member on investments that we're making. We've increased adult primary treatment in Winnipeg, St. Norbert, Brandon's, St. Rose, Thompson, the Paw. We've increased youth addiction services right across our great province. We've increased rapid access to addictions medicine right across the province. We've increased rapid addictions, again, digitally, so anywhere in Manitoba people can get access to those services. Under the PCs, opioid addictions, overdoses increased in 2019, 143 deaths, went all the way up in 2023 to 794 deaths. That was under their record. We'll take no lessons from members opposite. We'll continue to support, meet people where they're at.
Time has expired. The Honourable Member for Waverley.
Honourable Speaker, after years of neglect under the previous government, seniors were left with decaying personal care homes, declining quality of life. But seniors built this province, and they deserve to live with dignity and respect. Just yesterday, our government had important news for seniors across this province. Can the Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care please tell Manitobans a bit more about yesterday's finger-licking good announcement?
Yeah!
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Honourable Speaker, as the Premier has said, food is medicine. And we were so excited to stand with seniors to announce that we're investing $5 million for better food at personal care homes right across Manitoba. That means fresher meals, better nutrition, and more choices for seniors. But this is about more than just food. This is about dignity, comfort, and quality of life. The PCs closed personal care homes and they cut funding, but our government is building 4 of them, and we're making sure that seniors, no matter where you live in this province, can age with dignity, care, and respect. More done, much to do.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Honourable Speaker, as they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's exactly what this Minister of Finance seems to be setting up for. After blaming part of his massive deficit on the 2025 wildfire season, Budget 2026 has no additional contingency for a possible extreme wildfire season. Why has this NDP government not reversed their dangerous cut in the Natural Resources Emergency Expenditures budget?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for that question. Unfortunately, he's the minister that actually cut all that funding. So as the former failed natural resource minister, he cut that funding. And let's be clear, Honourable Speaker, we sat here on the cusp of the worst wildfire season in history, and they sat here and rang the bells while we were in a state of emergency last spring. And what did they do? They called that the best days of their lives. Shameful on them. We're investing, we're digging out of that hole. We're going to continue to invest across the wildfire season in anticipation of what we look like and what it's going to be coming forward, and we're increasing the dollars to that, something members opposite never ever did.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, thousands of Manitobans were displaced by wildfires in 2025. Many lost their homes and their lives have changed. Weather data from Environment and Climate Change shows precipitation is 40 to 60% of normal in the northern fire area. Verbal reports from northern residents indicate that nearly 20 fires are burning beneath the snowpack. Given these reports, why is this NDP government sacrificing emergency preparedness to try and fake a lower budget deficit?
The Honourable Minister, Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures.
Honourable Speaker, $1.2 million to add 19 new wildfire firefighters to the season. $1.2 million to upgrade the weather information fire mapping systems. $1.1 million for aerial firefighting services. Thompson Firefighting Base, Honourable Speaker, we're investing strategically across the entirety of the province in anticipation of what the fire season may look like. I know members opposite wanted to be able to hope it rained, hope the fires didn't start. That's not hope. That's not hope for at all. For us, we want to be able to invest in strategic ways across the entirety of the province, and we're doing that in real time. So as we go and we continue the conversations, learning from last year, I know members opposite do not want to learn from their mistakes. They want to just continue on and make mistake after mistake after mistake. We're going to learn, we're going to adapt, we're going to affect, and we're going to invest.
The honourable member for Riding Mountain on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, I table the department's weather report for this minister. Fire crews from Manitoba, other provinces and around the world moved heaven and earth to save lives and property. It's incredibly insulting to firefighters and all Manitobans that this government has reflected on these heroic efforts but learned no lessons. The wildfire suppression budget line hasn't changed. Considering inflation, why has this minister cut wildfire suppression spending?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures.
Honourable Speaker, I'll say it again, $1.2 million to add 19 firefighters to the system. $1.2 million to upgrade the fire mapping system. $1.1 million for aerial firefighting services. That member opposite did nothing but cut, and hope and pray that it didn't the fires didn't start, that it rained and rained. I know he's trying to table weather reports, but the fact of the matter is, Honourable Speaker, we live this in real time. And I do want to uplift everybody who stepped up in the fire season last year, because we truly were one Manitoba, with the exception of members opposite.
The honourable member for Borderland.
After the devastating wildfires that tore through Manitoba in 2025, families and entire communities expect this government to be better prepared. The NDP cut the emergency management budget, knowing that risks of wildfires after years of dry weather are growing in Manitoba. In fact, they budgeted only $50 million for emergency preparedness, and yet fighting last year's wildfires cost $350 million. Why has this government failed to ensure that this year's budget reflects the growing risk of wildfires rather than reacting after communities are already in crisis?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures.
Honourable Speaker, $75 million for the attack base in Thompson. That's an investment that's real time that people could count on in northern Manitoba. I know the member opposite, in his seat here sitting in the chamber today, this is the furthest north he's ever been in the province of Manitoba. And that's shameful. So he gets up here and pretends to speak and represent the entirety of the province when he has no idea what he's talking about. We talk about perimeteritis. That member is just chamberitis, and he doesn't go anywhere else besides outside of this chamber.
The honourable member for Borderland on a supplementary question.
That is not a serious minister. We saw it right there. And I'm wondering why the minister responsible for emergency preparedness isn't allowed to get up and answer these questions. So this one's for her. The Premier said in a CBC article that emergency funding is merely a, quote, placeholder, yet the 2025 wildfires underlie the need for preparedness to save lives and homes. This NDP government's most recent budget has failed to restore the funding that they cut. And yet last year's wildfires cost 7 times more to fight than they budgeted. Not only is this fiscally irresponsible and imprudent, but it undermines proper emergency planning and preparedness. Why has this minister failed to do her job?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I know this is unfamiliar to members opposite, but on this side of the House, we're a team. We work together across departments. We work across departments to support Manitobans. EMO did an incredible job of supporting Manitobans this past summer, and we've added 15 new full-time positions to EMO in advance of hazard season in the year ahead, which we all hope to have a better year, but we will continue to work together as a government to support Manitobans. We will always be there in an emergency for all Manitobans. Thank you.
The time for oral questions has expired, and there's some more guests in the gallery I'd like to introduce at this time. Draw the attention of all honourable members to the public gallery, where we have with us today Tina Zink-Braun, Nana Sakamoto, Amanda Will, who are guests of the honourable member for Lajmodiere. We welcome you here today. As I said, the time for oral questions has expired. Petitions. Orders of the day. Government business. Order, please. As previously agreed, we will now consider a government resolution regarding the appointment of the Ethics Commissioner. Once that is concluded, we will resume debate on the budget motion. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I move, seconded by the Minister of Justice, whereas a subcommittee of the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs was struck to manage the hiring process for the Ethics Commissioner and the Information and Privacy Adjudicator, and whereas the subcommittee, following an open competition and consideration of applicants, recommended to the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs that Sherry Walsh be appointed Ethics Commissioner and Information and Privacy Adjudicator, and whereas the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs recommends the same to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, and whereas, pursuant to subsection 11(1) of the Lobbyist Registration Act, a person shall be appointed by the Register by resolution of the Assembly. Therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to subsection 33(1) of the Conflict of Interest, Members and Ministers Act, Sherry Walsh be appointed as Ethics Commissioner effective May 1st, 2026, and therefore be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 58.1(1) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, Sherry Walsh be appointed as the Information and Privacy Adjudicator effective May 1st, 2026, for a term of 5 years from the date of commencement, and therefore be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 11(1) of the Lobbyist Registration Act, Sherry Walsh be appointed as Lobbyist Register effective May 1st, 2026, for a term of 5 years from the date of commencement.
It's been moved by the Honourable Minister of Families, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Justice, that dispense. So now the floor is open for debate. The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, on behalf of our NDP caucus, we want to wish Sherry Walsh an excellent 5 years in her new role, and each and every one of us look forward to working with her as she helps us fill out the many, many different forms that we have to fill out as members of this Legislative Assembly. Congratulations.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Yes, as elected officials, we rely on this position being filled here today by Sherry. So often there's questions that we reach out, and there's always going to be answers there. So it's comforting to know that Sherry will fill this role, and I just want to say welcome from the PC caucus.
No further members wishing to debate. Is the House ready for the question? The question is, shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. So now, as previously announced, we will move on to continuing debate on the budget. So the budget debate, standing in the name of the Honourable Member for McPhillips, who has 17 minutes remaining. The Honourable Member for McPhillips.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'll just pick up where I left off yesterday, talking about the budget 2026 being a budget of good jobs, lower costs, and better health care. And I was mentioning yesterday that I had a conversation with a constituent in the morning about some of the expenses of day-to-day living, whether you're going to the pump and you're filling up on gas. I can hear the member across the way heckling right now. He absolutely hates it when Manitobans get a break at the pump. But on this side of the House, we know that Manitobans deserve a government that's looking out for them. That's why we cut the gas tax for an entire year and introduced a permanent 10% gas tax cut for Manitobans, which we're really proud of. But it didn't stop there. There were a whole host of measures in this budget that we had introduced, continuing to fight some of the day-to-day expenses that Manitobans face, and particularly the one that I know everybody on this side of the House is super proud of, is the removal of PST on groceries. And this is something that like I was saying yesterday, having a conversation with a constituent of mine, and the feedback from him was, this is a really, really good step. Everybody's got to eat, everybody's got to go grocery shop, and I think if we can do something to help Manitobans, that we should take that step. The Premier made mention of this a few days ago, that oftentimes governments will say that there's not very much that can be done to combat food inflation. There are, I guess, limited levers that governments can pull on this, but the fact of the matter is that this government has been pulling on whatever lever is available to it to help reduce those costs as a grocery store. So the introduction of legislation to increase competition in the grocery store sector to reduce prices is something that we've been really steadfastly pursuing. And now to add to that, the removal of the PST on grocery stores, or on groceries, I think is another thing that's going to help with Manitobans. But I was mentioning yesterday that the increase in the homeowners tax, the affordability tax credit to $1,700 a year, I think is something that Manitobans are really going to appreciate, as well as tax credit for renters, support for seniors, free transit for youth, and doing all this while still investing in good jobs for Manitobans. So creating a $10 million Churchill Plus Catalyst Fund to unlock private sector investments in Churchill. This is extremely, extremely important for Manitoba, and the question of turning Manitoba from a have-not province to a have province. And I'm really proud of the work that this government's been doing in pursuing investments in Churchill and unlocking the potential that Churchill has for Manitobans for the future. And of course, the investments in healthcare continue as well. 4,054 net new healthcare staff added to the front lines. And there's more investments coming to St. Boniface and the Cardiac Center, reestablishing a center that was closed under the opposition. And so making all these investments and responding to what Manitobans are asking of this government, I think is obviously really welcome and really important. But to be able to do that and present a budget that has the lowest deficit of any budget across Canada is truly remarkable, and reducing the debt servicing costs that this unfortunately taxpayers are on the hook for. But this government is reducing those costs and reducing the weight or the penalty to Manitobans, and still making life more affordable for Manitobans and investing in healthcare. So it's really a remarkable feat. And you hear the opposition talk about adding $1 billion more to the deficit and really rocking the finances of our province for a political ploy, something that I guess got cooked up by some political hack in the back rooms there, but not a real serious proposal. And that contrasts with what we've seen in Budget 2026, which is real action, real tangible ways for Manitobans to save, real tangible ways to help Manitobans through a cost of living difficulties, and while still being good stewards of the Manitoba finances, which is something that I can't say enough, that I'm really proud to stand on a team that takes that very seriously, unlike what we saw with the previous government that left us with a $2 billion massive deficit when we came into government in 2023. So, Honourable Speaker, I'm really proud to speak to this budget, and I know there's a lot of good things in here for all Manitobans. This really is. There's really something in here for every single Manitoban, but I do want to just make a note of the fact that the folks in my part of the province, in Northwest Winnipeg and the surrounding area, also seeing those investments with 3 new schools slated to be constructed just within my constituency alone. So right now we've got the school in Aurora, which will have new childcare space, and I believe that's going to be opening up later this year. We just broke ground on the new school in Meadowlands a few weeks ago, also with additional childcare, and then down the road we're going to have a new school in Highland Point. And I'm mentioning this because it's so critical in a part of the province and a part of the city that's seen so much growth in the last decade. But unfortunately, public infrastructure and public investments did not keep pace. And so now we're doing that work to catch up to it. And I hear a lot from my constituents about childcare. We've got a lot of young families who live in my constituency, and obviously we know childcare can be a barrier for folks entering into the workforce, particularly women. So childcare is critically important that we make these investments and have those spaces ready for them. So this government is aggressively pursuing new childcare spaces for Manitobans, which is going to allow more Manitobans to get into the workforce and to grow our economy. So I know that my constituents are particularly excited for that. And I'm really happy to see this government's continuing to pursue those investments. But all in all, fantastic budget. I'm going to cap my remarks here and let my colleagues speak to how wonderful this budget is on both sides. It seems like the PCs have no shortage of wonderful things to say about this budget. You're doing wonderful work. I wish we had done this, is what I'm hearing constantly. So I'm going to cede the floor to my colleagues here to tell us more about how awesome this budget is. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Roblin.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy. I'm grateful, as always, for the opportunity to get up and speak to the amendment put forward by my colleague, the Leader of the Official Opposition, to speak in favour of the amendment and to point out some of the many flaws in the NDP's budget that necessitated this amendment. But I do want to start my comments by, first of all, thanking the people of the Roblin constituency, the people of Charleswood and Headingley. Every meeting that I have in my constituency office, every door that I knock on, every event that I attend, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with my constituents and to hear more about their priorities and the issues that matter to them. That's what we're here for. We are here to serve our constituents and to bring their issues forward to this legislature, and their phone calls, their emails, those conversations help me to do my job better. And so it's some of those issues that I want to bring forward in my comments today. Because I think, for the most part, the people of Charleswood and Headingley and the people of West Winnipeg have been largely abandoned in this budget. Some of the issues that the member for McPhillips was speaking about just before me also matter to the people of West Winnipeg, but they're not getting any action from the NDP. I do want to talk specifically about childcare, because this is something that I hear about. I'm going to say it's currently the #1 issue I'm hearing about from my constituents in Charleswood and Headingley. Thousands of kids in my constituency are on wait lists for childcare. I'm a working parent myself. I know firsthand how stressful it is to be on those wait lists and to not know if you're going to have childcare in place in order to work. Some of us are lucky and we can find family supports or other arrangements, but for too many Manitoba families, a lack of access to childcare means that someone in the family can't go back to work, which has huge financial implications for their household, but it also has a lasting impact on Manitoba's economy. We are dealing with workforce shortages across many sectors. Manitoba businesses need their employees in their jobs, and in order for them to do that, they need access to childcare. I looked through the budget. I looked for the words Charleswood. I looked for the word Headingley. It's not there. When it comes to childcare, there is nothing promised. The previous PC government had signed with the federal government agreements to expand childcare spaces at 2 schools in my constituency, Beaver Lodge and West Grove. They are sorely needed childcare spaces, but this government dropped the ball and hasn't moved forward with those spaces and hasn't made it clear, despite multiple letters that my constituents and I have written to the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning with no response. It is not clear what the NDP government's plan is. They have added 0 spaces to Charleswood and Headingley, and this budget promises nothing for them. It's a huge problem for families in my constituency, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring that concern forward here on the floor of the legislature today. Members in this legislature will be very familiar as well with Phoenix School, another project that's incredibly important to my constituency that was left out of this budget. I read this petition at every opportunity in the legislature where I talk about Phoenix School, which is the only elementary school in the community of Headingley. It's bursting at the seams. I love to go in there for I Love to Read Month every year and for other events, but it's clear that they are out of space. And the previous PC government understood that. They approved a project to proceed for a new gymnasium, a couple new classrooms, new multi-purpose room, a renovation and expansion project. They're not asking for a new school. They like the school they have. They just need it to be bigger and to better meet the needs of one of the fastest growing communities in Manitoba. And again, this NDP government came into power and they cut it. They sent a letter to the school division saying, oh, we're going to defer that project. And there's been no word since. The #1 priority of the entire St. James Assiniboia School Division is Phoenix School in Headingley, and it's being ignored by this NDP government. I searched the budget. I thought every year before the budget, I think this is going to be the year. And I talk to the families in Headingley, and I say, we've pushed. I'm sure they're listening. They keep saying they're listening. I'm sure they're going to move forward with this project, but they don't. It defies belief, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that this NDP government calls themselves a listening government, but so willingly ignores the needs of Manitobans. Property taxes are another issue that's impacting people in Charleswood and Headingley. And I want to pull up some numbers here because I want to make sure I get these right. The changes to property tax rebates put forward by this government do not benefit the people of Charleswood and Headingley. Homeowners in Charleswood are about to be hit with a whopping 9.9% increase to their education property taxes, and the measures put forward in this budget do not help them. The reason that property tax increase is coming on their education property taxes is because this NDP government is underfunding education in Pembina Trails. They gave Pembina Trails a funding increase of 0.9%. It doesn't even account for inflation. It doesn't meet the division's needs. And the superintendent, Shelley Amos, was very clear about that. She said publicly that the NDP government's decision to underfund the division was going to mean either increases to local taxation or cuts to programming. And nobody wants to see cuts to programming in our schools. So the school division has had no choice but to jack up property taxes. But the NDP government refuses to accept responsibility for that. They prefer to hide behind the municipalities that have to collect the tax and the school divisions that have to impose the tax. Those are decisions that are going to have a direct impact on the household budgets of families in my constituency, and it's incredibly disappointing that, the way it was funny, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the way that this Premier and the Finance Minister were teasing property tax relief before the budget was released. I think people really thought it was going to be substantive. It wasn't. It was like a deflating balloon for Manitobans who saw the supposed property tax relief they were getting and then compared it to the property tax relief they were getting under the previous PC government. It is a tax hike for families in my constituency, but this NDP government doesn't care about them. And another way that this budget has failed my constituents in Charleswood and Headingley is its complete ignorance of the needs of small businesses. And I touched on this in question period today, but you only get 45 seconds to ask a question in question period. So I want to elaborate on this a little bit for members today. Small businesses make up 97.8% of businesses in Manitoba. They are the economic drivers of this province, and they were completely ignored by this NDP government's budget. The minister got up today and he talked about security rebates. That's not going to cut it. Small businesses put forward a list of priorities for this government in advance of budget. Because again, they say they're listening. I mean, they held budget consultations a month before the budget dropped, so I'm going to go ahead and assume the budget was already printed when the consultations were being held. But they held consultations. So small businesses had that opportunity to come and say, these are our priorities. And the NDP government said, yeah, we're listening, and then completely ignored them and left it all out of the budget. Let me tell you what the budget didn't do. It didn't provide any relief on the payroll tax. It didn't increase the corporate income tax threshold to better match our neighbors. It didn't reverse the NDP's damaging changes to apprenticeship ratios. It didn't do anything to reduce red tape or to improve regulatory accountability. And I know that to members opposite, those are just words. But to small business owners, those represent a real tangible cost to their bottom line. And this NDP government took Manitoba from being the best in the country for red tape reduction and regulatory accountability. There's a report card put out annually by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, an organization that the government likes to quote when they're saying something that they like, but denigrates at every other opportunity. CFIB gave Manitoba an F on red tape reduction and regulatory accountability. Under the previous government, they were top in the country. In just 2 years under this government, what a fall and what a cost to small businesses. Because small businesses often don't have a compliance department, they don't have an HR department, they don't have somebody whose only job is to make sure they're complying with all of this government's regulations. It's typically the proprietor, the small business owner themselves, who's also the head of customer service, who's also the head of finance, who's the head purchaser, who's in charge of everything, is also in charge of making sure that they're complying with all of this government's regulations. And this government gutted. They actually repealed regulatory accountability legislation, and the report they put out on, quote, regulatory accountability this year was an absolute joke. It meant nothing for small businesses in our community. So all of these failures for small businesses, the result of this has been that we have seen, under this NDP government, 6 consecutive quarters where small business exits have outpaced new business starts in Manitoba. Businesses are literally fleeing this province. And when you consider that they make up almost 98% of the businesses in this province, that spells trouble for Manitoba. It spells trouble for our economy, it spells trouble for jobs, and it spells trouble for our communities, because let's not forget, small businesses, their presence in our communities matters. Storefront businesses, they are the ones who are sponsoring the hockey tournaments and the pancake breakfasts and the fall festivals in our communities. It's small businesses. It's not Loblaws, it's not Walmart, it's not Costco, it's the local insurance company, it's the local grocery store, who, and by the way, the only so-called meager affordability measure put forward in this budget completely excluded small businesses and restaurants. I don't know if that was just some kind of oversight or mistake, because the Premier seemed legitimately caught off guard when he was asked by reporters about it. But yes, the only pitiful, meager, so-called affordability measure put forward in this budget completely excludes small businesses, which is interesting because a lot of what you would call a food desert in Manitoba, a place where there isn't a nearby large grocery store, a lot of those are represented by NDP MLAs. And so they must be aware that in order for Manitobans to access those meager savings, they need to find a way to get themselves to one of the big grocery stores. In many cases, they can't do that. They're going to their local corner store where they are not going to be able to access the pitiful pennies of savings that this government has offered them. It doesn't make any sense. Restaurants, similarly, and restaurants have taken such a hit over the last few years, Honourable Deputy Speaker, between COVID and workforce challenges and the hurdles put in place by this NDP government. For them to be completely left out of this budget as well is just unconscionable. I have a few other things I want to talk about with this budget. I want to talk about some of the things I would have liked to have seen in this budget that simply weren't there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on healthcare. Manitobans are dealing with some of the highest wait times in Canada, highest ER wait times, longest waits for diagnostic tests and surgeries. And I thought it was really interesting that this budget completely left out diagnostic imaging and testing. There was nothing in this budget to address the fact that so many Manitobans, thousands of Manitobans, are on wait lists for ultrasounds, MRIs, CT scans, mammograms, and there's nothing in this budget to address that. Diagnostics is the bridge between knowing something's wrong and getting the care that you need. And if you can't get the tests that you need, you can't get the treatment that you need. And that was completely left out of this budget. One of the other issues that I hear about regularly from my constituents in Charleswood and Headingley is home care. And it was paid lip service at best in this budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I think there was one sentence about home care. And let me explain why that's important. Home care has a direct effect on ER wait times. If you've got Manitoba patients in hospital waiting to be discharged into the community, but they require the support of home care, they can't leave the hospital without that support. Right now, they're finding that that support is not available. Weekly, I hear from both home care clients, I hear from their families, and I hear from home care workers themselves who tell me that there are hundreds of people who have been assessed as needing home care in the WRHA and haven't yet received a visit from a home care worker. We're talking for things like compression stocking removal, for showers, for really basic care. They can't get it. And this, the NDP just left it completely out of the budget. It doesn't make any sense, Honourable Deputy Speaker. This is the same government that made really terrible scheduling changes to the way the WRHA schedules home care about a year ago. And it doesn't sound like a big deal until you realize that it caused absolute chaos in home care in the WRHA. And the fact that there's nothing in this budget to undo that damage is a real problem. We saw that thousands of home care visits were canceled across Winnipeg. Home care clients couldn't anticipate who would be coming to their house or when. So they're getting a different home care worker arriving every day, which is not good for workers, and it's definitely not good for patients, particularly if you're dealing with a client who's got dementia. That continuity of care is really important. The home care program can't function the way this NDP government is requiring it to function. It's bad for patients, it's bad for families who have to step in and fill in the gaps. You talk about the sandwich generation, people who have young kids at home and aging parents and constantly having to fill in for a failing NDP home care program. It's not sustainable, particularly when you consider the demographics of Manitoba and the way that our population is aging. The lack of attention to community-based care in this budget was really concerning. It's also important to remember that 3 hospitals remain grey listed in Manitoba right now. Those are thousands of healthcare workers who have chosen to condemn the inaction of this NDP government when it comes to safety and security issues. That is something that this NDP government owns. These grey listings have happened under their watch, and it was really interesting to watch the Minister of Health go out and complain about this and basically say, oh, this is just a tactic, and this is close to a direct quote, this is just a tactic that the unions employ when the NDP is in power. How dismissive is that? This is a government that calls themselves, we're a listening government, they say it at every turn. But when thousands of healthcare workers condemn their inaction, they dismiss it as a union tactic. That's not a listening government. And that doesn't even touch on the impact this has on Manitoba patients. Because if nurses don't feel safe going to work, nurses aren't going to take shifts at those facilities. Who pays the price? Patients do. And I think the fact that those 3 hospitals, that's unprecedented in Manitoba history, by the way, for 3 hospitals to be grey listed at the same time. One of those grey listings dates back to August of last year, months ago. The fact that those grey listings remain in place tells me that this NDP government has not yet addressed the issues put forward by the unions. That should have been the top priority for healthcare in this budget, and it wasn't. Again, they re-announced a few things. The whole health section of the budget is heavily padded with re-announcements of things they say they're going to do, but they haven't done yet. So I think when it comes to healthcare, I'm certainly taking a I'll believe it when I see it approach to some of what this government says they're going to do. And I think Manitobans are wise to do the same because they're dealing with situations where their loved ones are waiting, in some cases for life-saving treatment. And unfortunately, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we've seen cases over the last several months where Manitobans have actually died waiting for the care that they need. No Manitoban should be in that situation. We on this side of the House have proposed some ideas to help prevent that from happening. One of those is Debbie's Law, which the NDP have blocked at every opportunity. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because all that it would do is require the government to let people know if they're not going to get the life-saving care that they need in time, so that they can pursue options elsewhere and save their own lives, and the NDP government won't even do that. There's no mention of that in this year's budget either. As a Winnipeg-based MLA, I also, just before my time runs out, want to briefly mention the importance of the North End Water Pollution Control Centre, NUPIC, and how this government has left it out of the budget. And it's so funny to get up in question period and ask these ministers and this premier, well, if you're doing it, where is it in the budget? They can't point to it because it's not there. I have combed through all 147 pages of this budget. The most important capital project to Manitoba's largest city, where 75% of Manitobans live, is not in this budget. And really, Honourable Speaker, that is indicative of what this budget is. It is not reflective of the priorities of Manitobans, and that's why I support the amendment put forward by my colleague. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Honourable Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to rise in the House today to put a few words on the record regarding Budget 2026. Good jobs, lower costs, and better health care. While the other side went on a slash and burn tour when they were in power, our government went on a listening tour. By listening to our constituents and being accessible to everyone across the province, we are better informed to come up with a budget that works for everyone. One Manitoba. Our goal has always been to work with Manitobans to unite our province, not to reward our friends and create a province that is divided. Every budget is, at its core, a statement of values. It tells Manitobans what matters to their government. And this budget makes one thing unmistakably clear. We believe in investing in people. And investing in children is one of the best investments we can make in our province's future. Honourable Speaker, I'm going to focus my words today on the education aspect of the budget. Prior to being elected to this role, I was a teacher for 30 years. I was a teacher, a consultant for students with additional needs, and an administrator. I've worked with students from kindergarten to grade 12. And when I think about the 7.5 years when the opposition was in power, I think about the harm they did to the education system and the damage they did to everyone working in education. Morale was at an all-time low, staff were laid off, and children suffered. As the member for Seine River talked about, I too remember running out of paper at school, running out of school supplies, even the MAGA red crayons. But as teachers do, we made the best of a horrible situation. I hope the education system never has to suffer like that again. When we talk about the future of Manitoba, we are really talking about our children, who they will become, the opportunities available to them, and the kind of province we choose to build around them. This belief guides many decisions in Budget 2026. It is why we are investing in children at every stage of their lives, from early learning to K-12 education, to community recreation, to lifelong learning. Not in isolation, but as a part of a connected system that supports families, strengthens communities, and builds opportunity for everyone. Honourable Speaker, education is the foundation of opportunity. It is where children discover who they are, what they're capable of, and how they can contribute to the world around them. That is why this budget increases school funding by $80 million, representing, yes, $80 million, representing a 3.5% increase, and importantly, the third consecutive year in which school funding has increased above inflation. That consistency matters. It means school divisions can plan for the future rather than scramble to keep up. It means schools have the resources they need to respond to growing enrollment, rising costs, and the diverse needs of students without sacrificing quality of support. But education is not just about funding classrooms. It is also about making sure we have the right buildings in the right places. Manitoba is growing, and families are choosing to put down roots in communities across the province. Budget 2026 responds to that growth by moving forward with 11 new schools, supported by $118 million in capital funding for the first 4 projects. These are not schools built for yesterday's population. In fact, schools like Devonshire Park and Prairie Point are being expanded from the original 650 students to 800 student capacity, reflecting the needs of fast-growing neighborhoods. This is about planning ahead, not falling behind, and ensuring that parents can be confident their children will have a place in their community school. Of course, a school is only as strong as the people inside of it. That is why this government has focused heavily on staffing and student supports all across this great province. Over the past 2 years alone, we have added 832 teachers, 577 educational assistants and support staff, and 72 clinicians to Manitoba schools. These investments mean more individual attention for students, more inclusive classrooms, and better mental health and learning supports. They mean fewer students falling through the cracks and more students reaching their full potential. Honourable Speaker, supporting children also means supporting families. Every parent understands the pressure of rising costs, and raising a child should not feel overwhelming or out of reach. That is why our universal school nutrition program is such an important part of this budget. Over the past year, our program delivered over 30 million meals and snacks, reaching more than 93,000 students every single day. This program does more than fill stomachs. It reduces pressure on family budgets, improves student focus and attendance, and ensures that every child, regardless of their community or circumstances, can start the day ready to learn. That is not charity. That is smart, preventative policy. This budget also makes transit free for kids and youth. When you think about the cost of daily bus fares over a month, over a school year, that adds up quickly. Our measure puts that money back into families' pockets and eases pressure on household budgets right away. It also removes a barrier for some of our students to attend school. We are also expanding access to affordable, high-quality childcare. Budget 2026 supports 21 new childcare centres and more than 2,300 new spaces, including a new $10 a day childcare centre with 80 spaces right here in Winnipeg. Affordable childcare is not a luxury. It is an essential infrastructure. It allows parents to work, to pursue education, and to participate fully in the economy. It strengthens families and helps build a more inclusive workforce. But, Honourable Speaker, childcare only works when the people who provide it are respected, supported, and fairly compensated. That is why, following last year's historic $5 an hour wage grid increase, this budget increases wages for early childhood educators by another 2%. These are not abstract investments. From March 2023 to February 2026, Manitoba's licensed childcare workforce has grown by 40%, with 1,118 more early childhood educators now working in the system. We are also expanding the $5,000 Recruit Back incentive, which more than 800 educators have already received. That is how you build a sustainable system, not by making promises, but by making sure there are qualified, dedicated professionals caring for our children every day. Honourable Speaker, childhood is not only about academics. It is also about play, exploration, and physical activity. For the first time, new schools in Manitoba will be built with playgrounds included, eliminating the fundraising burdens that too often fall on parents and school communities. And because existing schools matter just as much, we are launching a new Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities Fund, supporting playgrounds and play structures across Manitoba. Safe, accessible spaces to play are essential to healthy development, and this budget recognizes that. Beyond school grounds, our government is investing in the places where kids gather, build friendships, and stay connected to positive activities. Through From the Ground Up funding, we have invested in 58 hockey rinks and ice surfaces, 8 pools and aquatic facilities, 66 playgrounds, parks, and green spaces, and 104 recreation programs. These spaces do more than host activities. They build connections, foster belonging, and keep young people engaged in their communities, after school, on weekends, and throughout the year. Honourable Speaker, this budget also acknowledges a truth long understood by many communities. Education must reflect identity, culture, and belonging. For many youth who are Indigenous, success in education is deeply connected to access to culture, language, and traditional ways of knowing. That is why our government continues to invest in healing lodges and land-based education initiatives. In partnership with Manitoba Kiwatanoe Okamakanak, we anticipate opening the Thompson Youth Healing Lodge in 26-27, providing culturally appropriate supports and traditional teachings for children in the North. The goal is clear: to reduce the overrepresentation of youth who are Indigenous in custody by addressing root causes, strengthening identity, and offering a better path forward. Honourable Speaker, unlike the members opposite during their 7.5 years of failure, this government will not leave children behind. We refuse to accept underfunded schools, overwhelmed classrooms, or families left to carry costs on their own. We know that children are Manitoba's future, and we are prepared to act on that belief. Honourable Speaker, this is what it looks like to believe that children are our future, not as a slogan, but as a governing principle, as a set budget of choices, as commitments backed by real dollars, real people, real spaces, and real opportunities. And that is exactly what Budget 2026 delivers. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Borderland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. You know, it was interesting, after listening to the budget speech, which, as some of my colleagues have said, and we've heard from Manitobans in the days since, was incredibly underwhelming. The government certainly had us primed for something big, and then you listen to the budget speech, and there's literally nothing in there. There's not even numbers in there. It just fell absolutely flat. It was big nothing burger at the very best, and there were some really concerning elements in there at the very worst. But namely, when it comes to taxes and our deficit and the trajectory that this NDP government has put Manitoba on when it comes to economic growth. But it was interesting, as I was saying, reading the reaction in the Winnipeg Free Press of all the people that they talked to, some of the stakeholders who you would think would be friends of this NDP government, and just to read their reactions. For instance, Doctors Manitoba, Dr. Nichelle Desolé, said that we are disappointed. The government's budget included no signs of fulfilling their election promise to add 250 team-based providers in physician practices. Again, that's from Doctors Manitoba, Dr. Nichelle Desolé, someone who the health minister enjoyed quoting here from time to time, and yet this is the reaction from Doctors Manitoba is one of disappointment at a failed election promise put forward by this NDP government nearly 3 years ago. Here's a quote, here's a reaction from Margaret Schrader from QP 204, who said, and I quote, "One nurse to 50 patients is unacceptable, but nurses aren't working alone. Healthcare aides and dietary aides are doing hands-on patient care every single day and are consistently short-staffed." Here's another one, this one from Kate Kaler, Social Planning Council of Winnipeg. Quote, "We're investing more in healthcare because we don't invest in eradicating poverty. If we eradicated poverty, that would actually have the most positive impact on the healthcare system." Here's one from the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, from AMM, Kathy Valentino, the president, who said, and I quote, "I have mixed reactions and disappointment in the lack of increase in investment for water and wastewater infrastructure projects in the province. We've heard loud and clear from municipalities that they are ready to grow, but with no increase in water and wastewater infrastructure, they won't be able to grow," end quote. And I can wholeheartedly support that sentiment as someone representing the Pembina Valley region, an area where we get most of our water from the Pembina Valley Water Co-op, which draws its water from the Red River, and increasingly, you know, I don't know if I can say unreliable at this point, but there are serious concerns about about water security and about the reliability of the Red River as a water source for the growing Pembina Valley region. And the Pembina Valley Water Co-op has been advocating for investments in the Legislature water treatment plant for many years, and I was happy under our PC government to help and join in those lobbying efforts and to secure more than $13 million in upgrades, in provincial dollars, for upgrades to the Legislature water treatment plant. Again, something we didn't see in this year's budget. Not a single mention of the Pembina Valley, and not a mention of water and wastewater infrastructure projects. And of course, Mayor Gillingham, as the Mayor of Winnipeg, has made his concerns clear about the lack of a mention for the North End sewage treatment plant. And here's Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham on the topic of water and wastewater and the lack of any support by this NDP government in their budget. He said he was disappointed in this budget as there was no mention of the North End sewage treatment plant. Quote, "If we don't get that project built," again, this is the mayor, "if we don't get that project built, fully funded and built within the next few years, we're going to have to put a complete stop on all future growth. There will be no more housing developed. There will be no more jobs created because no more businesses will be able to set up shop," end quote, said Gillingham. So what's interesting is when the PCs were in power, we funded the first two phases of the North End treatment plant. Now that the city is looking at the third phase, this NDP government is nowhere to be found. They have put nothing up to support that third phase, that critical third phase. And again, we see the short-sightedness of this NDP government. The mayor raising the prospect of no more jobs created and no more businesses being able to set up shop because of a failure to fund, on the part of this NDP government, to fund the third phase of the North End treatment plant. So, you know, as I said, it was interesting to read the reaction of Manitobans, Manitoba stakeholders, leaders in our economy, and you know, even some of those, as I said, who this NDP government like to quote and pretend that, you know, these are their friends, and yet, you know, one word was consistent all the way throughout, and that was disappointment. So many stakeholders, so many Manitobans felt that this budget was just a major disappointment. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Manitobans haven't forgotten that the Premier, this NDP Premier, hiked their income taxes last year with bracket creep while he keeps borrowing more money. The government needs to provide real tax relief instead of painting over tax hikes with inadequate measures that leave taxpayers worse off overall. That's the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We had an NDP minister across the way, the so-called a business minister, talking about you know, supports for business. And it's interesting because you know, I'm not sure that he's aware, but this is what Chuck Davidson, president of the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, had to say. He said, quote, "We were looking for a little bit more. We would have liked to have seen some measures as well for businesses." So in general, here's another good one. This is Kyle Ross, another one of the, someone who should be a friend of this NDP government, and yet is disappointed in the work that they're doing. This is Kyle Ross, president of the Manitoba Government and General Employees Union, who said, "We've advocated pretty hard for our issues in corrections and wildland firefighters. We've seen a sprinkling of that, but overall, our workers are doing more with less continually, and we're not really seeing any advancement in bringing in people to do this work." That's from Kyle Ross, saying that this government, as a result of this NDP government, we're, quote, not really seeing any advancement in bringing in people to do this work. So it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. I think we can all agree in Manitoba that this truly was a terrible, terrible budget. You know, and I think most Manitobans were left asking, where is the affordability relief that so many of us are looking, so many Manitoba families are looking for? The reason why Manitoba families are struggling to put food on the table and to make ends meet at the end of the month is because of the unbearable tax burden caused by this NDP. They have jacked up education property taxes, and those skyrocketing education property taxes and higher income taxes are making life unaffordable for Manitoba families. Statistics Canada says in Manitoba, education and property taxes have increased by 20% from 2025 to 2026. 20% in 1 year, a 20% education property tax hike in 1 year. And while they talk about their flat tax credit going up by $100, that's only a 6% increase. So they're effectively taking $200 with one hand and giving back $100 with the other. And so at the end of the day, Manitobans are left with less and less of their hard-earned dollars. PST on groceries, there's already no PST on virtually all groceries. Only prepared meals, foods and snacks have PST. So that means that a family of 4 might save $10 a month on pop, chips, and ice cream. But that's not real affordability. And we've been calling in this chamber for real income tax relief. That's what we need in Manitoba. We have some of the highest taxes in Canada, certainly this side of Quebec. And so we have put forward a resolution calling on the government to increase the basic personal exemption to $30,000 from $15,000 where it is today. This would provide immediate affordability relief to low and medium income earners, and that would result in $1,500 per year in income tax savings for Manitobans, $3,000 a year for families. Some other concerns in the budget. It's interesting that now federal transfers account for 36% of all provincial revenues. So that's almost $10 billion. That's $9.6 billion out of a $27 billion provincial budget comes to us from the federal government. That is a, that is a flashing check engine light on the dashboard of our economy if there ever was one. You know, when we're not growing our economy, when Manitobans are leaving to fleeing this NDP government's tax hikes and regulatory burden and the growing red tape and bureaucracy and the all talk and no action, and Manitobans are getting, at least those that can afford to, are getting out of here. Unfortunately, those who can are stuck under the burden of this NDP government. But you know, that's when the economy is not growing, income tax and corporate income tax revenues aren't growing either. Sales tax revenues aren't growing. And so you're actually not, bringing in the money that you need to provide the social services that Manitobans depend on, like healthcare. And that's a huge concern. So they're taking us exactly in the wrong direction. When it comes to healthcare, and we've talked about this, but you know, Manitobans certainly know what it's like to have to go to an ER today. You know, under this NDP government, healthcare has gotten worse. We're facing record healthcare wait times. hip and knee surgeries, cataract, all the rest of it, diagnostics, MRI. Wait times stretch into not only weeks, but months and actually years. I have so many constituents come to me complaining that they've been waiting for years, and then when they find out, oh, somehow they're not on the list, or something happened, and so they wait years just to get on a list, just to wait longer. It's this runaround that they're being given in our healthcare system. Really thanks to this NDP government's mismanagement of our healthcare system. And so, again, as I said, those Manitobans that can afford to do so, they go and get their hip and knee surgeries done in Arizona while they're on vacation there, and they get it done right away. And then they come back and they say, boy, am I glad I did that. I was waiting for a year or two. I've been waiting forever, getting nowhere, no prospect of getting medical attention. And here I was able to go. So that's a pretty stinging indictment of where this NDP government has left our healthcare system. But sadly as well, the deaths of 4 Manitobans, in the last number of months, waiting in an ER. And I think that's something that resonates deeply with Manitobans, because we all know, the concern when you go in with a loved one, whether it's a child or a parent, or a spouse, someone who needs medical attention in a real, immediate fashion, and then you're, told to wait in the waiting room, and you wait for hours and hours and hours and don't get medical attention. That's the record of this NDP government. And the reality is they promised they would fix it. They acted like they had all the answers. They had all the answers in the 2023 election. And they've, in the 3 years since, have done literally nothing. And in fact, they've made it worse. So the economy is in worse shape. Our unemployment rate is higher. Taxes are higher. Manitobans are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. And healthcare wait times are longer. And by the way, now that it's springtime, I mean, you drive our roads, like our roads it's a hellscape out there. They're so riddled with potholes and everything else. And, it's like the damage that it's doing to our vehicles in the middle of an affordability crisis when you hit these potholes. And I mean, not only do you damage your tires, but there's all kind of some of these potholes, could rip an entire axle right off of your car. And this is what you're trying to swerve around here in the city. I was on St. Mary's the other day going home, and that is one horrible street. Pembina, then there's out my way, Highway 14, which is an incredibly oversubscribed highway. A lot of commercial truck traffic on that one. Highway 75 is a perennial disaster. But infrastructure, they've been in power for 3 years now. And, Chris Lawrence, Manitoba Heavy Construction Association, the president there, has made it very clear that, our infrastructure budget should be at $1.2 billion annually, and it's stuck at $500 million a year. And look at what Manitobans are getting for their tax dollars. We're spending all of this money and getting what? Longer healthcare wait times, terrible infrastructure, and in an economy that is increasingly in dire trouble. So all of these things, again, point to a major disappointment. This budget was a major miss. This NDP government has the reins of power right now. They have the ability to do something, to roll back that tax and regulatory burden on Manitobans, to actually build. Instead, when they got elected, what did they do? They canceled the construction of 6 personal care homes. They canceled the construction of 14 schools. These were all, again, 6 personal care homes, 14 schools put forward by the previous PC government. They came in, their first act was to cancel that. They canceled the Surgical and Diagnostic Task Force, which was reducing wait times and shrinking the wait lists for key surgical and diagnostic procedures. So they did a lot of damage in their first couple of days, and they had an opportunity this week in their budget to try to climb out of that hole, to put down the shovel, to stop digging, and grab a ladder and try to climb out of that hole. And they entirely missed that opportunity. So with all of that said, Speaker, Honourable Speaker, again, a major disappointment. We've heard from Manitobans about this budget. Incredibly underwhelming and a major missed opportunity to address the very real challenges facing Manitoba families, small businesses, farmers, and so as a result, I will be voting no to this budget.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Merci, l'honorable président. Il me fait chaud au cœur d'avoir l'opportunité de parler au sujet de notre budget 2026 qui a été mis de l'avant par une équipe incroyable avec un premier ministre le plus populaire au Canada et un ministre des Finances qui est outillé, capable, très compétent et qui est à l'écoute des Manitobains et des Manitobaines, qui est à l'écoute de nos familles, qui est à l'écoute de nos aînés, et qui est à l'écoute de nos enseignants, de nos écoles. Et je suis fier d'être capable ce matin de parler de ce budget, mais je trouve, Monsieur l'honorable président, plutôt rigolo d'entendre les conservateurs râler, se plaindre, chialer au sujet d'un budget qu'ils savent qui est incroyable et qui d'ailleurs va mettre de l'avant des priorités qu'ils n'ont jamais été capables d'accomplir. Donc, ce qu'ils font, ils râlent, ils se plaignent, et puis ils continuent à mettre de côté un budget qu'ils savent, qui est d'ailleurs incroyable, et qui, au fondement, a une priorité importante pour tous les Manitobains et les Manitobaines, et c'est le secteur de la santé. Vous savez, l'honorable président, il y a une semaine, malheureusement, dans la famille Loisel, on a perdu notre père. Lucien Loisel est décédé suite à des défis cardiaques. Dans ma famille, ma mère, mon père et mon frère Richard ont passé à travers les soins cardiaques à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface. Et ce, avant les coupures des conservateurs qui ont nui aux soins cardiaques. Et la question que je me pose aujourd'hui, Monsieur l'honorable président, c'est est-ce que mon père serait encore en vie si les conservateurs n'avaient pas cancellé les soins cardiaques à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface? Et je suis fier de faire partie d'une équipe qui va réinvestir aux soins cardiaques à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface 22 millions de dollars pour s'assurer que les Manitobains et les Manitobaines ont accès à des soins cardiaques de qualité quand ils en ont besoin. Ma mère a eu sa première opération de cœur en 1960 à la Mayo Clinic au Minnesota. Parce qu'à ce temps-là, ici au Manitoba, on n'avait pas la capacité de lui donner l'opération dont elle avait besoin. Et à ce temps-là, le gouvernement Duff Roblin n'était pas prêt à payer l'opération à cœur ouvert dont ma mère avait besoin au Minnesota. Mon grand-père est allé devant le gouvernement Duff Roblin et lui a dit « Allez-vous tuer ma fille? » Parce qu'à ce temps-là, on n'avait pas la capacité qu'on a en ce moment. Ma mère, ensuite, en 2008, avait encore besoin d'une opération à cœur ouvert. Mais heureusement que le centre cardiaque d'excellence des soins de santé existait encore à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface. Ce n'est plus le cas. Il faut le rebâtir. Non seulement pour les soins cardiaques des hommes, mais aussi avec un focus spécial sur le soin cardiaque pour les femmes. C'est ce que les Manitobains et les Manitobaines s'attendent de leur gouvernement. Un gouvernement qui est à l'écoute, qui prend soin des aînés, qui prend soin de nos familles qui prend soin de nos élèves dans nos écoles pour s'assurer que les écoles sont bien fournies avec les outils dont ils ont besoin. Et encore une fois, on apporte des solutions que les conservateurs n'ont pas apportées pendant leurs 7 années et demie au pouvoir. Est-ce qu'on a doublé le financement pour le Centre culturel franco-manitobain? Absolument. Et on continue à le faire dans ce budget. Est-ce qu'on a ouvert un centre juridique bilingue pour les Manitobains et les Manitobaines? Oui, on l'a fait et on continue à le faire avec le budget 2026. Est-ce qu'on ouvre une nouvelle école à Saint-Boniface? Absolument. Il faut. L'éducation en français continue à être une priorité pour notre gouvernement, mais aussi pour les familles manitobaines. Dans nos écoles de DSFM, on retrouve environ, en ce moment, 6 500 élèves. Et ça monte en flèche. Nos écoles sont pleines à craquer. Donc, ça nous prend d'autres écoles francophones, comme ça nous prend d'autres écoles d'immersion, d'autres écoles anglophones. Et notre gouvernement continue à bâtir des écoles. D'ailleurs, je suis très fier qu'on va bâtir une nouvelle école, la DSFM, à Brandon. Bâtir de nouvelles écoles dans nos villes rurales, comme à Winnipeg, est une priorité. Pendant mes 28 années d'enseignement, j'ai eu la chance de travailler à plusieurs niveaux. Élémentaire, secondaire, pour adultes aussi. D'ailleurs, j'ai évolué pour la majorité de ma carrière dans un centre pour adultes, dans un programme qui s'appelait Youth Build pour les jeunes autochtones. Et dans ce budget, l'honorable président, on investit un autre 2,5 millions de dollars pour appuyer l'éducation pour adultes. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on sait que quand un jeune adulte finit son secondaire, il est ensuite capable d'avancer soit à un collège, à une université, ou encore dans le domaine des métiers. On a besoin des charpentiers, des électriciens, des plombiers. On sait qu'on a présentement une pénurie de maisons, de logements au Manitoba. On a besoin d'en bâtir plus. Ça va nous prendre une main-d'œuvre bien outillée. Et ce budget met de l'avant ces priorités. Je sais aussi qu'en ce moment, on a beaucoup de jeunes au Manitoba qui ont de la difficulté à se rendre à l'école. Ce n'est pas toujours évident. Donc, dans notre budget, on continue à mettre de l'argent de l'avant pour le programme de nutrition. Parce qu'on sait que quand un jeune arrive à l'école et que pour une raison ou une autre, n'a pas eu la chance de manger quelque chose, dans nos écoles maintenant, à travers le Manitoba, on a un programme de nutrition pour s'assurer que chaque enfant a quelque chose à manger le matin, de faire en sorte qu'il est capable de s'appliquer en classe. Notre budget avance une autre priorité, aider les jeunes élèves au Manitoba sous l'âge de 18 ans de se rendre à l'école en prenant un autobus, transit comme on dit en anglais, mais de transport en commun. Et puis vous savez, Monsieur l'honorable président, pour un jeune, pour se rendre à l'école en autobus, transport en commun, ça coûte environ 20 $ par semaine. 20 $, c'est beaucoup. 20 $ x 4, pour le mois, c'est 80 $. Pour l'année, c'est 800 $. Puis encore une fois, les conservateurs se plaignent, râlent contre le fait qu'on va aider à rendre la vie plus abordable pour les Manitobains, les Manitobaines, les familles. Je comprends pas. Comme mon grand-père disait, ils savent pas de quoi ils parlent. 800 $ par année, par jeune, c'est beaucoup d'argent. 2 jeunes au secondaire, ça fait 1 600 $. Imaginez-vous qu'est-ce qu'une famille peut faire avec 800 $ de plus dans leur budget. 1 600 $ de plus dans leur budget. 2 400 $ de plus dans leur budget pour une famille de 3. J'étais à l'école Henri Bergeron l'autre jour. Il y a un jeune qui a dit « Monsieur Robert, c'est incroyable. Je vais être capable d'acheter un nouveau patin pour jouer au hockey. Monsieur Robert, c'est incroyable. Il va peut-être avoir plus de nourriture à l'entour de la table, à l'heure du souper. » Des jeunes de 6e année de 6e année qui ont 12 ans, M. l'honorable président, ont tout de suite compris l'avantage. Mais les conservateurs, pour une raison ou une autre, je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qu'ils ont manqué en 6e année, peut-être qu'ils n'ont pas fini leur 8e, je ne sais pas, ne peuvent pas comprendre ce que ça veut dire pour des jeunes familles. Pour nos aînés, parce qu'il ne faut jamais oublier les aînés, on a mis de l'avant 5 millions de dollars de plus pour s'assurer que nos aînés sont bien nourris de façon adéquate dans les centres d'âge d'or. Alors, encore une fois, j'ai de la difficulté à comprendre pourquoi que les conservateurs ne peuvent pas juste embarquer, comprendre que les élèves, les jeunes familles, les aînés, c'est une priorité. Puis s'ils veulent essayer de voter contre le budget, bonne chance. Parce que les Manitobains ne vont pas être contents si les conservateurs essayent de voter contre le budget. Parce que c'est un bon budget qui est à l'écoute des priorités, des aînés, des familles, du système d'éducation, du système de la santé, et c'est un budget qui fait avancer notre province avec empathie. Puis encore une fois, à la mémoire de mon père Lucien Loisel, il faut se demander si les soins cardiaques à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface n'avaient pas été démantibulés par les conservateurs pendant leurs 7 années et demi au pouvoir, il faut se demander si mon père serait encore vivant aujourd'hui. Je ne suis pas content, mais je suis heureux que notre gouvernement va rebâtir les soins cardiaques à l'hôpital de Saint-Boniface pour tous les Manitobains et tous les Manitobaines. Merci, l'honorable président.
The honourable member for Brandon West.
Riveting. Thank you. Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to put words on the record that will reflect this budget and what it meant to my constituency and what it meant to the rest of Manitoba. And I know it's been mentioned by the Brandon Sun, our local paper. The headline read, "This budget was Brandon blind," and the First Minister proceeded to chastise me for using that phrase, that although the Brandon Sun picked it up. So on his behest, I have looked a few more words to maybe articulate this. And so I think I can say that this budget was Brandon blinkered, which means narrow-minded or limited vision. I could also say that this budget was Brandon besotted, which is foolishly infatuated or unaware. Again, it could be Brandon benighted, which is unenlightening. It could be Brandon blocked or obstructed, as the definition goes. But it could also be Brandon blundered. And this is the one where I pulled out the definition that I like the best, because it says a significant, careless, or stupid mistake, usually caused by ignorance, inattention, or stupidity. It acts as both a noun, as a massive error, and as a verb, to make such an error or move clumsily. And its synonyms include gaffe, bungled, oversight, botched, and stumbled. And those are from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So I think all of those aptly describe how this budget was for Brandon. It was Brandon blundered. You know, we see announcements over and over and over again in this budget, recycled and reused. again and again talking about issues for Brandon. Nothing in there of significant importance besides what has been re-announced from previous budgets. The Brandon Regional Health Center has been asking for an expansion of the emergency room to try and help them out there. Its growing needs, to make sure triage is better, to make sure the service to the public is better. Not one mention in the budget about this. In this very house, I spoke about the needs of Brandon residents and how they're lining up daily for hot meals through Helping Hands. Helping Hands is a critical support for Brandon and the neighborhoods that it serves, the communities that it serves, serving, I believe it was in the neighborhood of 51,000 hot meals, and now they've extended that service to bag lunches on weekends to help support the community. These are people that are living in extreme poverty because of issues caused by the inaffordability measures of this budget. Not one penny has been put forward to Helping Hands in this budget. I'm disappointed to say that. Nothing for a lot of the other help services in Brandon that rely on government support, and instead they have to go back to the ratepayers and to the community for donations and charity. It's been mentioned by my colleague from Roblin and from my other colleagues here in the chamber that there was nothing in this budget for the small independent grocery stores and for the restaurants. It's deplorable when we look at the amount of money that is going to be going to the large conglomerates and nothing to the independent businesses that rely on this government daily. And they came to the table with nothing to offer. And that's unfortunate for each and every one of those businesses. I was hoping the goose would have come to Brandon and laid that golden egg, but that goose didn't intend in Brandon, unfortunately. There was no golden egg, there was no funds left there, and it's unfortunate for our citizens. I'd like to talk a little bit about the amendment that's moved forward, and it's under I, failing to take necessary measures to restore public safety in communities across Manitoba, as this budget contains no plan to address rising property crimes or to advance reforms to the bail system aimed at keeping violent offenders and repeat criminals in custody. When we look at the promise in the budget, the promise was 12 officers. I took a moment to break that down because of my past policing career, and somewhere like Rivers or Victoria Beach or a smaller police service, 12 officers would be great to deploy to their areas. 12 officers in Manitoba equals a 0.0046% increase, as there's approximately 2,582 police officers in Manitoba. So Manitobans get that. 0.0046 is the amount that this government is willing to spend on your safety. The amount that this government is willing to put forward for policing initiatives to keep you safe from the rising crime under this NDP government. And put that into another perspective, there's 1.51 million people in Manitoba. 12 officers, that gives each one of them the responsibility for 125,833 citizens individually. This is a drop in the bucket. It's insultive, and it's certainly not part of a safety plan for Manitobans. It's shameful when we look at that. The amount of pressure that is put on to the police officers and the number of people that they interact with daily and weekly and monthly. They're interacting with people who are in the worst state that they could possibly be that day, and they're expected to do that with little to nothing from this government. Also, within this budget, we see nothing to help with our court system capacity. Right now, they are stretched so thin, they have very little resources. Cases will not only be delayed, they're going to end up collapsing. There's case law that has been put into place that Crown attorneys and the courts must follow now. And they have to have trials within 18 months or 2 years for the serious offenses. With our Crown attorneys stretched incredibly thin right now, with more and more pressure being put on them with digital evidence, with convoluted cases, with changing requirements because of Supreme Court rulings, that timeline is getting harder and harder to follow. And we've seen it across a number of cases across the country, including Manitoba, where cases have been stayed or collapsed because they could not meet the timeline that's required under the criminal code, under the laws to match what they need. And that, Honourable Speaker, is frightening for victims that deserve to have their time in court, that deserve to have their cases gone through. I can't imagine a victim of a sexual assault having to hear from the Crown attorney or from the police services of jurisdiction that their case has been dropped or has been left behind because they couldn't meet the time requirements. And that's because this government isn't funding the Crown attorneys. The Crown attorneys could probably use a 50 to 100% increase in their staffing to keep up with the workload. But even a small amount would have been helpful, but we saw zero in this budget. That goes with the court workers and all of the people that are involved in that justice system. So not only the Crown attorneys that need the support, let's move over to legal aid. Legal aid is provided to those that can't afford to have a hired lawyer at a higher rate. And right now we're seeing that capacity drop to near nil. There is less and less lawyers that are willing to take on legal aid cases because of the compensation, but also because of the workload that's provided to them, and yet not a dime of funding for this. Not a dime for legal aid, and that's going to leave them struggling. They're already woefully below market rates, and the pressure of the sinking number of lawyers that are willing to take on cases will just exasperate the system, and it will continue to have issues that will result in not only cases being lost, but embarrassment to the government as a whole. The next step, you know, we talk about the whole of government, let's talk about the whole of the justice system, and let's talk about corrections. Correctional facilities are severely overcrowded. We've heard that from the correctional officers. They've been calling for some help, but again, although there's some money put towards corrections this year, there is nothing to help with the overcrowding. There's nothing to help with those that are jammed into these cells day after day that causes more risk for the individuals that are guarding them, because people get frustrated, people get upset in the jails, and then having this overcrowding just causes more issues for them. Jails are literally bursting at the seams right now, and there's concern about upcoming bail reform. You know, if bail reform is going to happen at the federal level because God knows nothing was done by this NDP government on the local level, although they said they could fix it on their own in 100 days. And it's been nearly 2.5 years. Not a thing has been done on bail reform here in the province. But if the federal government comes through with increasing or augmenting the bail reform system, we can expect that more individuals will come into custody. And with that is the growing concern of the number of cases that will go through the court system. The Crown attorneys will need to do more work again. The legal aid system will need to do more work. And the jails will ultimately have to house these individuals. And that is going to exacerbate the problem and increase it for the whole of the justice system. No money was forwarded by this NDP government to look after that. People are scared, Honourable Speaker. People are scared in Manitoba. People are fearful for their safety. You would have think that that would have been an area that this government concentrated on, but instead they refuse to even acknowledge it, and they just move forward like it's same as yesterday. But unfortunately, everything is changing. Policing is getting more complicated. Jails are getting fuller. The court system is getting backlogged. But this NDP government doesn't seem to care and doesn't seem to want to do anything about that. It's funny, though, this government will provide funding for security rebates and home protection supports and business safety grants, but let's call that what it really is. And that is a transfer of responsibility from government to the citizens. So basically, they're saying, I'm going to wash my hands of any of the responsibility for public safety, and I'm going to put it on you, the citizens of Manitoba. It's expected for you to take care of yourselves, and it's expected for you to maintain the safety of your businesses and your homes. And on the same token, when we bring up a law or a resolution that would help support individuals in their homes and when their property and their own health is being attacked, it's voted down. It's nothing to do with the government. They're concerned that, you know, they don't want to be part of that. So continuing on that public safety amendment, we have to say that this really isn't public safety. This truly is government acknowledging their own failures within the system of the justice world. It's also important to note that there's absolutely no plan for repeat offenders. None whatsoever. And it's common knowledge in policing and in law enforcement and in justice that a very small percentage of individuals cause the most crime and the most havoc. And there's nothing in there to specifically target. No integrated strategies that connect. They talk about an all-of-government approach. There's nothing here that connects justice with corrections, with mental health, with housing and addictions. Instead, it's arrest, release, reoffend, and repeat. And I'll say that again. It's arrest, release, reoffend, and repeat. And that's on a complete spin cycle from this government. And they've done nothing to address it, Honourable Speaker. It's just a complete revolving door. And it's shameful that this NDP government has refused to address that, even though they said
Order,
they could.
please. When this matter is again before the House, the honourable member will have 3 minutes remaining. The hour being 12:30, this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until Tuesday, April 7th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m.